Hi, everybody. A lot of you might be aware of Cynthia McKinney and how outspoken she is and knowledgeable she is about the truth of events that are shaping this world and not in a positive way. She served on the Congress for 12 years, and I think currently she is in school getting a PhD. I want to tell you what she has to say about the Nice attack in France and the Munich attack. But first, I want to share some amazing things that she has to say. So let's take a listen.
The next thing that is extremely important is to understand the motivations around what is happening today. And in order to do that, you've got to rely less on the mainstream media, which have been authorized, at least in the United States, by the court system of the United States, to knowingly lie to the public. So it's not the CNN and the Fox and the MSNBC and CNBC and NBC and all of that you want to rely on. If you do rely on those news outlets, then you're probably misinformed rather than informed.
Who else tells you that? Aside from us? Did any other Congress member tell you that? No, absolutely not. And this is the first thing someone needs to know, in my opinion, the first thing anybody needs to understand before they start to wake up, or if you want to wake someone up, I think that this is where you need to start. They need to understand how they've been tricked into their belief system. Once you break that down and you prove that, which is very easy to prove, there are tons of articles and videos on YouTube, on the internet, to show people that absolutely, unquestionably prove that they are engaged in fakery and lying all the time. It's so easy, it's all out there. So that's an easy way to start to wake someone up.
I thank the gentleman, the gentlelady from Georgia, Ms. McKinney.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I watched President Bush deliver a moving speech at the United Nations in September 2003, in which he mentioned the crisis of the sex trade. The president called for the punishment of those involved in this horrible business. But at the very moment of that speech, DynCorp was exposed for having been involved in the buying and selling of young women and children. While all of this was going on, DynCorp kept the Pentagon contract to administer the smallpox and anthrax vaccines and is now working on a plague vaccine through the Joint Vaccine Acquisition Program. Mr. Secretary, is it policy of the U.S. government to reward companies that traffic in women and little girls? That's my first question. My second question, Mr. Secretary, according to the Comptroller General of the United States, there are serious financial management problems at the Pentagon, to which Mr. Cooper alluded. Fiscal year 1999, 2.3 trillion missing. Fiscal year 2000, 1.1 trillion missing. And DOD is the number one reason why the government can't balance its checkbook. The Pentagon has claimed year after year that the reason it can't account for the money is because its computers don't communicate with each other. My second question, Mr. Secretary, is who has the contracts today to make those systems communicate with each other? How long have they had those contracts? And how much have the taxpayers paid for them? Finally, Mr. Secretary, after the last hearing, I thought that my office was promised a written response to my question regarding the 4 war games on September 11th. I have not yet received that response, but would like for you to respond to the questions that I've put to you today. And then I do expect the written response to my previous question, hopefully by the end of the week.
And of course, she is questioning Donald Rumsfeld. This is a terrorist, people. Donald Rumsfeld is a terrorist. He was involved in 9/11. He was involved in all those murders and the ensuing war in Iraq, Afghanistan, anything that came out of 9/11 that involved war and killing people, this man is partly responsible. This is one of the biggest mass murderers the world has ever seen, right here. Okay, there's a list of them, and this guy's on it. And Cynthia McKinney knows exactly what happened on 9/11.
I want to take you back for just a moment to 2001. Republicans had just stolen the U.S. presidency, taking office against the will of U.S. voters in the 2000 election. And as a member of Congress, I investigated that. I was the only member of Congress to do so. After that, the big issue of 2001 was the Durban World Conference Against Racism. I headed the Congressional Black Caucus Task Force and went head to head and toe to toe with the pro-Israel lobby that was determined to have the U.S. boycott the conference so that Zionists wouldn't have to defend their practices against the Palestinians. So they did everything in their considerable power to win the argument. But it was such a bad argument. And I was just as determined to have the U.S. participate in the conference. And so they lost. And I went to Durban, and I took 5 members of the Congressional Black Caucus there with me. I had commissioned an investigation into murders of members of the Black Panther Party that had occurred as a result of a U.S. government program that targeted individuals because of their political beliefs. I hand-delivered that investigation to Mary Robinson, who was the High Commissioner for Human Rights at the UN at the time. I was particularly outraged about Durban because I was expected to give up the opportunity to discuss my grievances so they could avoid having a discussion about Zionism. So indigenous people from all over the planet being robbed of their sacred lands and even their right to life were not seen to be as important part of a conversation. Africans still stinging from the loss of millions of individuals snatched from the continent in the massive transatlantic slave trade were to remain mute about how that crime against humanity affected them. Blacks in the diaspora, quiet about the indignities suffered on a daily basis. We were supposed to just forget our pain and suffer in silence because the Zionists didn't want us to talk about Palestine. To be honest, I didn't even know what a Zionist was. All I knew was that I had been asked to sign a pledge for Israel when I first became a candidate for Congress. And after refusing to do so, my congressional career became trench warfare, hand-to-hand combat, just to remain in the Congress. Ever since my refusal to sign that pledge for Israel, the pro-Israel lobby let me know that my political neck was in the hangman's noose. And then, on the morning of September 11, 2001, the World Trade Center towers came falling down. The topic of conversation immediately changed, and today humanity is on the brink. We lost a lot that day. A new level of criminality and immorality has been breached. Whole societies are being wiped off the map, while a sitting president of the United States openly advocates targeted assassination of U.S. citizens on U.S. soil. State crimes against democracy in the name of democracy have become the norm. And as with colonialism and neo-colonialism, even our identity has become so warped, we don't know who we are or what we should stand for, and so we are misled, acting on behalf of someone else's agenda, even to our own ultimate demise. All of this is the progeny of 11 September 2001 and Mumbai. With bombs raining down on Gaza right now, I remember what the Israeli Prime Minister said. He said, "We're all Israelis now." I agree that terrorism is a problem, And I know who the terrorists are. Dick Cheney told us to expect war for the next generation and drew up a list of 60 target countries. General Wesley Clark informed us of Pentagon plans to go to war against 7 countries in 5 years: Iraq, Sudan, Somalia, Libya, Syria, Lebanon, and Iran. Syria is in process, and only Lebanon and Iran are left standing. But I'm sure their turn will come soon too. General Wesley Clark called it a policy coup. He said that there had been a policy coup inside the United States. Not even 1 month ago, the former number 2 at the State Department, Lawrence Wilkerson, Colin Powell's right-hand man, said that what has happened in the U.S. is worse than a coup. The U.S. media would have you believe that the U.S. is divided. Non-white versus white, Christian versus Muslim, native-born versus immigrant, white versus Latino. I disagree with that. I've traveled into every nook and cranny of the United States, and I can tell you that people are united and sick and tired of war. The meme of division is developed by those who write the scripts in order to pit us against each other. That way, we forget to focus on those who planned September 11th, those who profiteer from war and killing, and those who, like cowards, vote to send our young men and women off to fight someone else's wars, or worse, remain silent even while whole countries are being destroyed. We need people with a moral compass in public office today. We need people willing to resist injustice and war in public office. Members of the Bush administration committed crimes against the American people, as well as international crimes, some of which have no statute of limitations. That continues under President Obama. The only way we can arrest this lawlessness is to hold them to account, not just in people's tribunals, which have their place, but also in courtrooms around the world.
That is some powerful shit. And I have one thing to say about it.
Fuck you.
Uh-oh, that was the wrong button. Oh, we have here a little technical difficulty. I thought it was the fuck yeah button. I don't mean fuck you, Cynthia McKinney, sorry. I don't use that noise box very often. I better get to know it a little better. Okay, so on we go to Nice and Munich. Sorry. Oh, that makes me laugh. I'm not going to do this video over again just to get rid of that. Okay, so this is in the Jewish Week, and you'll see exactly how that influences this article here. Ex-Georgia Congresswoman, Israel responsible for Nice and Munich terror attacks. Ta-da! There you have it. A former Georgia Congresswoman claimed that Israel was responsible for the recent terror attacks in France and Germany. Cynthia McKinney posted on Twitter Saturday night, "Same Israeli photographer captures Nice and Munich tragedies. How likely is that? Remember the dancing Israelis?" I remember the dancing Israelis.
And that is the information that I'm getting from 2 sources, that there was a van either on the New Jersey Turnpike or the Garden State Parkway, and that it was near the George Washington Bridge. There were 2 or 3 men who were in the van. The van was pulled over. It is not clear why the van was pulled over, but when it was, law enforcers found tons of explosives inside of the van. That is right now all I'm hearing, but again, 2 to 3 people in custody, and we are trying to get more information on that right now.
And who are those people that were in custody? They were these people, the dancing Israelis.
Binoculars, and I could see the towers from my windows, and this is where I'm looking, and all of a sudden, down there, I see this van parked. And I see 3 guys on top of the van, and I could see that they were like happy. You know, they didn't look shocked to me. You know that.
And at that point, we were taken for another round of questioning, this time related to our allegedly being members of Mossad. The fact of the matter is, we are coming from a country that experiences terror daily. Our purpose was to document the event.
The 5 Israelis were detained for 10 weeks and finally deported on immigration violations after the FBI cleared them of any involvement in 9/11.
That would have been Michael Chertoff. He has dual citizenship between the U.S. and Israel, and he released them. They admitted it on TV. You just witnessed it for yourself. They were there to document the events. You can't be there to document the events if you don't know the events are going to take place. And yet they were released. This is how obvious it is that 9/11 is an inside job, and that Israel is a big part of that, as is Saudi Arabia. So, I have a question when I watch a video like this and these people admit on national television in Israel that they were there to document the events, admitting it on nationwide TV. How do they get away with this? Well, they get away with it because they're protected. They can say anything they want in Israel. They can announce, they can go up there and say, yeah, we were involved in 9/11, and they'll get away with it. Our government is getting away. I mean, look at Hillary Clinton. She's a criminal. There's no question about it. She is a criminal. Her and her husband are thieves. They're also involved in murders. There is no question. And she is running for president. Worse, she will be the president. They get away with everything because we are letting them. In the case of these Israelis, they can say anything they want because Israel will protect them, as will the Israelis in our own government that have infiltrated our government, our whole system, which is designed and set up now to protect Israel. We give Israel $10 million every single day. No, that's not a mistake. Every day, $10 million to their military. As if we don't have any problems in America. As if we don't need that $10 million a day. I could make you a list of people and organizations that could definitely use some of that money desperately. So they get away with things like this for the same reason this mass murderer gets away for saying things like this.
Next thing you know, we've got the designs of a building. And the first design meeting was in April of 2000. And construction began shortly thereafter.
He just admitted that he had the designs for the new World Trade Center Building 7 in 2000, before 9/11. So this time, Larry Silverstein, I have a message for you. I'm going to hit the right button this time.
Fuck you.
There we go. I finally did it. So, I think this speech is in the World Trade Center 7 building. He's obviously talking to a group of Israelis who know exactly what 9/11 was. They know they're involved in it. They're all terrorists. We're being ruled and run by terrorists. I don't want to say we're being run by them. Because a lot of us who are awake, I'll just speak for myself. I don't consider myself being run by our government because I don't comply. So, let me finish this article here now. All right. So that was her. Let me reread her tweet, her Twitter tweet. Same Israeli photographer captures Nice and Munich tragedies. How likely is that? Remember the dancing Israelis? The tweet includes a link to a video about the photographer's coincidence on the Veterans Today site. Dancing Israelis, here we go. Dancing Israelis refers to a conspiracy theory that 5 Israeli men were detained by police in New Jersey on 9/11 after being caught celebrating the attack on the World Trade Center. This right here, this is first and foremost a blatant lie. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a fact. This is a worldwide fact. Everybody knows this is the truth. They were detained. They were celebrating the attack. I just showed you the woman who saw them. Then they go on live TV and say they were there to document the event. They even admit they were there. So this Jewish rag newspaper calls it a conspiracy theory. Or either that or it's just a very poor writer who doesn't know what the hell he or she is doing. The photographer in question, Richard Gutjahr, our current terrorist, is not Israeli, but is married to an Israeli, Einat Wilf, a former Knesset member for the Labor Party. Wilf served in the prestigious Israeli Army's Intelligence Unit 8200. Of course they're going to call it prestigious. This is Jewish rag talking about Israeli. More likely, this is their Israeli army, more accurately, is a band of murdering terrorists. They kill children. McKinney was the Green Party presidential nominee in 2008. Gutjahr tweeted photos from the sites of both attacks, though he later said the Munich photos accidentally were deleted from his camera. Sure they were. In Nice, 84 people were killed July 14 by a rampaging truck driven by a French-Tunisian man. Not true. On Friday, a lone gunman, 18, shot up a Munich mall, killing 9. Also not true. These are faked fraud events. And if you want to see Richard Gutjahr's handiwork, well, let's check out this video. Oh, I'm so sorry. This video has been removed by the user. More likely, YouTube took it down because Richard Gutjahr filed a copyright strike. Third-party copyright strike that nobody ever has to prove is real or valid. And this was her tweet with this video attached, the tweet I just read to you. Also not mentioned in this article is the fact that Richard Gutjahr, who's dragged his young daughter into his terrorist world, ruining her life, was also at the Munich attack. What a coincidence. She said she's just a regular old gal, and yet she's a reporter. Turns out she's a reporter. She went on to say in an article that she was going to have interviews with all the mainstream media, propaganda whore outlets, such as CNN, CBS, ABC, NBC, MSNBC, all of them. Really? You're just a normal girl who is just must be interviewed by all the mainstream media rags? We see right through you. Her name is Senior Thamina Stoll. She is a lying traitor. She's young, starting a life of crime already, thanks to her lovely father, Richard Gutjahr, and his wife, Einat Wilf. What a name, right? So, to go further into little Thamina Stoll's fairy tale story, the Munich attack, there were a bunch of people, she says, that ran to her grandma's house where they had them there and gave them water and all this bullshit Jean Rosen type fairy tale made up stories. I mean, it's just, I have no words for how preposterous her story is, or how anybody can read it and believe anything she has to say about that. Everybody just happened to run to her grandma's house, really? And her father just happens to be the one photographing the Munich and the Nice attack? He happens to be at both, witnessing them? It's just, the whole thing is absolutely preposterous. And who proves us right more than anything else? Richard Gutjahr himself does. That's who. Richard Gutjahr himself, by attacking anybody revealing him. Richard Gutjahr, I have a message for you. If you want to prove us wrong or defend yourself, well, you have a YouTube channel. Why don't you make a video telling us how wrong we are and explain to us how innocent you are? That would be most appreciated. I'm sure a lot of us would be watching it with undivided attention. So here he is, Richard Gutjahr, terrorist, traitor to humanity. We'll be looking forward to your video on YouTube. So that's it. I'll wrap up this by saying Cynthia McKinney, she knows exactly what's happening in Nice and Munich. I would love it if she'd go further into saying that they're faked events, but this is enough for me to say that Israel is responsible for these attacks. And of course, so is the French government, and so is the German government. They're all involved in this, as is the American government. Everybody's one big happy party of terrorism, psychologically terrorizing the people of this world, and it absolutely must be stopped.